Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Be sure to subscribe to our channel. We publish new videos every day. Don't forget, grab your smartphone and download the Lava Matra app and stay in touch. Guru Mahārāja's message is your advantage. The following is a Sri Kṛṣṇa Caitanya book compilation given by His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Mahārāja on February 26, 2022 in Chennai, India.
Continuing Sri Kṛṣṇa Caitanya book compilation, today's chapter entitled as The Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs Humbly Ask Lord Caitanya why he is not studying Vedānta-sūtra part 2, under the section How all the residents of Varanasi became Vaishnavas. Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela 7.102.
Yata shuni hashi Prabhu bolila bachan dukkha namanaha jadi kori nivedan.
After hearing the Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs speak in that way, Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu smiled slightly and said, "My dear sirs, if you don't mind, I can say something to you regarding Vedanta philosophy." Purport: the Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs, appreciating Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, inquired from him why he did not discuss Vedanta philosophy. Actually, however, the entire system of Vaishnava activities is based on Vedanta philosophy. Vaishnavas do not neglect Vedanta, but they do not care to understand Vedanta on the basis of the Sariraka Bhasya commentary. Therefore, to clarify the situation, Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, with the permission of Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs, wanted to speak regarding Vedanta philosophy. The Vaishnavas are by far the greatest philosophers in the world, and the greatest among them was Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhu, whose philosophy was again presented less than 400 years later by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Mahārāja. Therefore, one must know very well that Vaishnava philosophers are not sentimentalists or cheap devotees like Sahajiyas. All the Vaishnava Acharyas were vastly learned scholars who understood Vedanta philosophy fully, for unless one knows Vedanta philosophy, he cannot be an Acharya. To be accepted as an Acharya among Indian transcendentalists who follow the Vedic principles, one must become a vastly learned scholar in Vedanta philosophy, and either by studying it or hearing it. Bhakti develops in pursuance of Vedanta philosophy. This is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.12. The words Bhaktya Shruta Grihitaya in this verse are very important, for they indicate that bhakti must be based upon the philosophy of the Upanishads and the Vedānta-sūtra. Srila Rupa Goswami said, devotional service performed without reference to the Vedas, Puranas, Pancharatras, etc. must be considered sentimentalism, and it causes nothing but disturbance to society. There are different grades of Vaishnavas: Kanishtha Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari and Uttama Adhikari. But to be a Madhyam Adhikari preacher, one must be a learned scholar in the Vedānta-sūtra and other Vedic literatures, because when Bhakti Yoga develops on the basis of Vedanta philosophy, it is factual and steady. In this connection, we may quote the translation and purport of the verse mentioned above. Bhagavatam 1.2.12. The seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedānta-sūtra. Purport. The absolute truth is realized in full by the process of devotional service to the Lord, Vasudeva, or the personality of Godhead, who is the full-fledged absolute truth. Brahman is his transcendental bodily effulgence, and Paramatma is his partial representation. As such, Brahman or Paramatma realization of the absolute truth is but a partial realization. There are 4 different types of human beings: the karmis, the jnanis, the yogis, and the devotees. The karmis are materialistic, whereas the other 3 are transcendental. The first class transcendentalists are the devotees who have realized the Supreme Person. The second class transcendentalists are those who have partially realized the plenary portion of the Absolute Person. And the third class transcendentalists are those who have barely realized the spiritual focus of the Absolute Person. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures, the Supreme Person is realized by devotional service, which is backed by full knowledge and detachment from material association. We have already discussed the point that devotional service is followed by knowledge and detachment from material association. As Brahman and Paramatma realization are imperfect realizations of the absolute truth, so the means of realizing Brahman and Paramatma, that is, the path of Jnana and Yoga, are also imperfect means of realizing the absolute truth. Devotional service, which is based on the foreground of full knowledge combined with the detachment from material association, and which is fixed by dint of oral reception of the Vedānta-sūtra, is only perfect method by which the seriously inquisitive student can realize the absolute truth. Devotional service is not therefore meant for less intelligent class of transcendentalists. There are 3 classes of devotees, namely first, second, and third class. The third class devotees, or the neophytes, who have no knowledge and are not detached from material association, but who are simply attracted by the preliminary processes of worshipping the deity in the temple, are called material devotees. Material devotees are more attached to material benefit than transcendental profit. Therefore, one has to make definite progress from the position of material devotional service to the second class devotional position. In the second class position, the devotee can see 4 principles in the devotional line, namely the personality of Godhead, his devotees, the ignorant and the envious. One has to raise himself at least to the stage of a second class devotee and thus become eligible to know the absolute truth. The third class devotee, therefore, has to receive the instructions of devotional service from the authoritative sources of Bhagavata. The number 1 Bhagavata is established personality of devotee, and the other Bhagavata is the message of Godhead. The third class devotee therefore has to go to the personality of devotee in order to learn the instructions of the devotional service. Such a personality of devotee is not a professional man who earns his livelihood by the business of Bhagavatam. Such a devotee must be representative of Sukadeva Goswami, like Suta Goswami, and must preach the cult of devotional service for the all-round benefit of all people. A neophyte devotee has very little taste for hearing from the authorities. Such a neophyte makes a show of hearing from the professional man to satisfy his senses. This sort of hearing and chanting has spoiled the whole thing. So one should be very careful about the faulty process. The holy messages of Godhead are inculcated in the Bhagavad Gita or in Srimad Bhagavatam are undoubtedly transcendental subjects, but even though they are so, such transcendental matters are not to be received from the professional man who spoils them as the serpent spoils milk simply by the touch of his tongue. A sincere devotee must therefore be prepared to hear the Vedic literature like the Upanishads, Vedānta-sūtra and other literatures left by the previous authorities or Goswamis for the benefit of his progress. Without hearing such literatures, one cannot make actual progress. And without hearing and following the instructions, the show of devotional service becomes worthless and therefore a sort of disturbance in the path of devotional service. Unless, therefore, devotional service is established on the principles of Shruti, Smriti, Purana and Pancharatra authorities, the make show of devotional service should at once be rejected. An authorized devotee should never be recognized as a pure devotee. By assimilation of such messages from the Vedic literatures, one can see the all-pervading localized aspect of the personality of Godhead within his own self constantly. This is called samadhi.
We say that sincere disciples.
So we see that sincere disciples,
they follow the spiritual master and study the Srimad Bhagavatam.
they follow the spiritual master and study the Srimad Bhagavatam
and other Vedic literatures.
and other Vedic literatures.
In this way, by hearing from a pure devotee,
In this way, by hearing from the pure devotee,
they achieve some success.
they achieve some success.
So, the Srimad Bhagavatam is a natural commentary of the Vedānta-sūtra.
So, the Srimad Bhagavatam is the natural commentary on the Vedānta-sūtra.
By hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from a realized soul, one can achieve pure bhakti.
So, by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from a realized soul, one can achieve bhakti very easily.
One should avoid professional reciters,
One should avoid professional reciters,
since they don't have a real taste for the Bhagavatam.
since they don't have the real taste for Bhagavatam.
A sincere devotee, when he speaks on the Bhagavatam, naturally one is enlightened.
When a sincere devotee, when he speaks the Bhagavatam, naturally one is enlightened. Next verse. Caitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela 7.103.
মায়াবাদী সন্ন্যাসীগণের নর্মতা ইহা শুনি বলে সর্ব সন্ন্যাসীরগণ তোমাকে দেখিয়ে জইছে সাক্ষাৎ নারায়ণ.
Hearing this, the Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs became somewhat humble and addressed Caitanya Mahaprabhu as Narayana himself, who they all agreed he was. Purport: Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs addressed each other as Narayana. Whenever they see other sannyasi, they offer him respect by calling Om Namo Narayanaya. I offer my respect unto you, Narayana. Although they know perfectly well what kind of Narayana he is. Narayana has 4 hands, But although they are puffed up with the idea of being Narayana, they cannot exhibit more than two. Since their philosophy declares that Narayana and an ordinary human being are on the same level, they sometimes use the term Daridra Narayana, poor Narayana, which was invented by a so-called Swami who did not know anything about Vedanta philosophy. Therefore, although all these Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs who called themselves Narayana were actually unaware of the position of Narayana, due to their austerities, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu enabled them to understand him to be Narayana himself. Lord Chaitanya is certainly the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana, appearing as a devotee of Narayana. And thus the Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs, understanding that he was directly Narayana himself, whereas they were false, puffed up Narayanas, spoke to him as follows.
Although Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs had a tradition of addressing each other as Narayana,
Although the Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs had a tradition of addressing each other as Narayana,
they felt that Lord Chaitanya was actually Narayana.
they felt that Lord Chaitanya was the actual Narayana.
And Lord Chaitanya is Kṛṣṇa himself as a devotee.
And Lord Chaitanya is Kṛṣṇa himself as a devotee.
So, at this point, it changed the heart of many of the Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs.
So at that point, it changed the heart of many Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs. Next verse. Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela 7.104.
তোমার বচন শুনি জুড়ায় শ্রবণ তোমার মাধুরী দেখি জুড়ায় নয়ন.
Dear Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they said, to tell you the truth, we are greatly pleased to hear your words, and furthermore, your bodily features are so pleasing that we feel extraordinarily satisfied in seeing you. Purport. As in the Shastras it is said, with one's materially contaminated senses, one cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead or His name, form, qualities or paraphernalia. But if one renders service unto Him, the Lord reveals Himself. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.234. Here one can see the effect of the Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs' service towards Narayana. Because the Māyāvādīs offered a little respect to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and because they were pious and actually followed the austere rules and regulations of sannyasa, they had some understanding of Vedanta philosophy, and by the grace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they could appreciate that. They could appreciate that He was none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is endowed with all 6 opulences. One of these opulences is His beauty. By His extraordinarily beautiful bodily features, the Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs recognized Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Narayana himself. He was not a partial Narayana like the Daridra Narayanas invented by so-called Sannyāsīs.
Lord Chaitanya had all the transcendental opulences.
Lord Chaitanya had all the transcendental opulences.
All strength, all knowledge,
All strength, all knowledge,
all beauty, all fame,
all beauty, all fame,
all renunciation, and all strength.
all strength and all renunciation.
So Lord Caitanya displayed all of these opulences.
So Lord Chaitanya explained all of these, displayed all of these opulences.
But he was by nature very humble.
But he was by nature very humble.
So although he had all these transcendental qualities,
So although he had all these transcendental qualities,
he spoke very sweetly to the Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs.
he spoke very sweetly to the Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs.
And he touched their heart.
And he touched their heart. Last verse. Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela 7.105.
তোমার প্রভাবে সবার আনন্দিত মন প্রভু অসঙ্গত নহে তোমার বচন
Dear sir, by your influence, our minds are greatly satisfied, and we believe that your words will never be unreasonable. Therefore, you may speak on the Vedānta-sūtra. Purport. In this verse, the words Tomara Prabhave, your influence, are very important. Unless one is spiritually advanced, he cannot influence an audience. Bhakti Vinod Thakur has sung Shuddha Bhakta Charana Renu Bhajana Anukula. Unless one associates with a pure devotee, he cannot be influenced to understand devotional service. These Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs were fortunate enough to meet the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of a devotee, and certainly they were greatly influenced by the Lord. They knew that since a perfectly advanced spiritualist never says anything false, all his words are reasonable and agree with the Vedic version. A highly realized person never says anything that has no meaning. Māyāvādī philosophers claim to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this has no meaning. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never uttered such nonsense. The Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs were convinced about his personality, and therefore they wanted to hear the purport of Vedanta philosophy from him.
A real pure devotee speaks everything absolute truth.
A real pure devotee speaks everything and the absolute truth.
And Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs got that kind of faith in Lord Chaitanya.
And the Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs got that kind of faith in Lord Chaitanya.
So they are willing to hear from him about Vedānta-sūtra.
So they were willing to hear from him about the Vedānta-sūtra,
which is their main book of study.
which is that meaning the book of study. Thus ends the chapter entitled The Māyāvādī Sannyāsīs Humbly Ask Lord Chaitanya why he is not studying Vedānta-sūtra Part 2 under the section How all the residents of Varanasi became Vaishnavas. Devotees can post their questions. All glories to your divine self, Guru Deva. Is sincerity to Guru based on our past karma? Your ever-loving spiritual daughter, Bhavatarini Radhika Devi Dasi.
One's sincerity to the Guru is transcendental.
One's sincerity to Guru is transcendental.
If one has very good karma, it may help.
If one has very good karma, it may help.
But generally one's sincerity is something individual.
But generally, one's sincerity is something individual. Next question. Guru Maharaj, do we need to plan our life ahead or will Kṛṣṇa take it ahead? Your servant, Varsha from Madurai.
If one is grihastha or going to be a grihastha, usually they plan their life ahead.
If one is a grihastha or planning to be a grihastha, then usually they plan their life ahead.
And if one is a brahmachari or sannyasi, then they may leave their life up to Kṛṣṇa.
And if one is a brahmachari or a sannyasi, then they may leave their life up to Kṛṣṇa.
We plan our life, we also depend on Kṛṣṇa.
But even if we plan our life, we also depend on Kṛṣṇa. Gurudeva, Lord and his pure devotees have compassion for everyone. But if someone does wrong to me, that impression lasts forever. How should I rectify myself? Please enlighten. Your unworthy son, Harihara Kṛṣṇa Caitanya Das.
There's no reason why you should remember something wrong done to you forever.
There is no reason that why you should remember something wrong done to you forever.
You can also think, a short time, and then go on.
You can also think about it for a short time and then go on.
That we learn from the mistakes of others.
That will be good for the mistakes of others. Learn from the mistakes of others. Dear Guru Maharaj, among many instructions that you have given, is there one instruction that if your disciples follow, you will be very pleased? Srila Guru Maharaj, could you please let us know what that one instruction would be? Your spiritual daughter, Ramya Shubhangada Devi Dasi, New Panihati Dham, Atlanta.
I never think like that.
I never think like that.
And if someone asks me, then whatever comes to my mind, I say that.
And if someone asks me, whatever comes to my mind, I say that.
But we want to do what's pleasing to Guru and Kṛṣṇa.
But we want to do what's pleasing to Guru and Kṛṣṇa.
In the material world, materialists are trying to enjoy the senses.
In the material world, materialists are trying to enjoy their senses.
In the spiritual world, we're trying to satisfy Kṛṣṇa.
In the spiritual world, we are trying to satisfy Kṛṣṇa.
And in the material world, we saw the Guru as the representative of Kṛṣṇa.
And in the material world, we serve the Guru as the representative of Kṛṣṇa.
So, as far as which question, which instruction, I request disciples to read Prabhupada books.
As far as which instruction is there, I ask the disciples to read Prabhupada books.
To help in the preaching.
To help in the preaching.
And so, those who read and help in the preaching, I'm very happy.
And so, those who read, they help in the preaching, and I am very happy.
Do you like our ad-free videos? Be sure to subscribe to our channel. We publish new videos every day, and don't forget to like and share our channel.